Hello there. Hi, very big welcome. My eighth Zoom meeting today online, so might stumble over my words a little bit. But thank you so much for joining me. I'm Baldwin Trott. This is the Being Fine live chat. I'm very thrilled to be here tonight with a kind of a guest author, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But thank you for watching tonight. Very excited to be streaming not just to Facebook, YouTube, but also LinkedIn. So this is my first LinkedIn live, if you like. But we have had such a response to our Being Fine book on LinkedIn. Obviously, most of our authors are a little bit older than my guest tonight, but they have all got very big, very successful professional lives. But they are sharing their story in this amazing book, Being Fine, the F Word. They are talking about their struggles, mental health, depression, suicide attempts, and they're opening up, some for the very first time. But that our book is now available on Amazon, on paperback, and obviously on Kindle. So instead of one of the authors from Being Fine tonight, I'm really excited and very grateful to have our guest tonight. He has done what a lot of people think of doing, but he's done it, and he did it very quickly. But he also, there was a very big reason why Perry Power has at last allowed himself to share his story. So a very big welcome to you, Perry Power. Hi.
Thank you, Joe. Hi. It's great to be here. You said about like your 8th meeting today, and especially since launching my book, I can heavily relate. But what great opportunities they are, though. It's a good problem to have.
It is, and actually, there's this constant audience.
Yeah.
And I'm watching more stuff than ever when I wouldn't normally be. It's a really good time to do what you've done, and I don't want to spoil it. I'm just going to get you to tell us what you did when you just went on to TikTok and something magical happened. So tell us about the TikTok moment, Perry.
Yes. So about a year and a half ago, this relatively new platform came out called TikTok. I went on there. It's just girls dancing, they're singing, teenagers are there dancing. It's just happy vibes, right? That's all you go at the time. You just go on it for happy vibes. And Perry Power comes along and wants to disrupt that, right?
You sure did.
Yeah, he said that again. And because I had this message, and I was at the time I was in communication with a lot of adults. So a lot of adults, men and women, more so women, would reach out to me and they'll tell me about their story with abuse. And for example, it would be like 15 years ago I was abused and I've been in silence, X, Y, and Z, but it happened quite a while ago. I wanted to talk to the people, i.e. the kids and the teenagers, where it was either happening, present, or it didn't stop that too long ago, right? And TikTok came about. I was like, okay, well, in business sense, my niche, right, my target market are on TikTok. And so I was like, you know what, screw it, just do it. So I put a video together as a story. I've worked in storytelling for like nearly 6 or 7 years now. And that's all I love to do is tell stories. And I put a story together as a 60-second video, and I put it onto TikTok. And right now it's got 250,000 views. That first video, my highest one, is 5.9 million views. And that was a story on my dad, about my dad's battle living in silence, how he used coping mechanisms, became an alcoholic, and then he passed away in silence at the age of 48. And that one just blew up. And what I didn't expect was what was going to happen, right? Because you can't message people on TikTok unless they're following you. So if you're a creator, you're usually on, 9.9 times out of 10, you're not following the people who are watching your content because you're a creator, right? So it's not like Instagram, you can just follow. It's not really the same thing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't following anyone, so nobody could message me. So therefore, because my Instagram was linked up with my TikTok, all of a sudden, anywhere between 5 and 20, legit, between 5 and 20 messages every single day in my outbox on Instagram was full of kids and of teenagers messaging me, either saying, thank you for sharing your story, means a lot, that's it. Or it was, thank you for sharing your story, I can relate because I went through it. Or the third time was, thank you for sharing your story. I'm kind of going through it at the moment and I don't know what to do. And it was just crazy response.
Wow, that must have really shocked you, I should imagine, because it's one thing to share your story, but then to suddenly have all this a situation, if that's the way to call it. But that must have been quite hard to deal with, I should imagine.
Yeah, so prior to TikTok, about 2 years prior to TikTok was the first time I shared my story and broke my silence. So I'd already been sharing my story consistently before that TikTok situation. So I'd already fully experienced people confiding in me, people breaking their silence with me. That part was fine. I'll tell you where it got uncomfortable, and I'll tell you why it got uncomfortable, because it was my first message that I got. It was from a girl who was living at home with her mum and with her uncle, and he was raping her, and she was burning out cigarettes on her skin, right?
Mm.
So she was getting abused sexually and she was getting abused physically from her mum and her uncle, right? And in that message, she just like shared with me that's what's going on. She goes, "I'm really struggling, but thank you for sharing your story." And I remember I read it, and I don't have regrets. I could sit here and be like, I wish I replied back sooner. But when I saw that, I don't know, it made me feel like, oh wow. And then I just didn't even visit my Instagram inbox for about a month to 2 months, because it made me, I was like, what on earth? Because I felt this responsibility, right? Because she came to me, I felt this responsibility to to stop what was happening to her, right?
Mm.
But then I got overwhelmed with this sense of like responsibility, and it just made me take a back seat. And then I was meditating one day. It's very random how it just happened. I was meditating one day, and I asked myself the question, and I was like, Perry, when you first shared your story, did you share your story for a response? And I was like, well, no, because I don't agree. You don't do things for a response, because you can't control the reaction of person or persons as a collective.
Mhm.
So you're just
Mhm.
sharing for yourself. And I was like, wow, I just wanted to share because I just wanted to be heard. That
Mm.
was it. I just wanted to be heard, because for 12 years, I wasn't heard because I was living in silence. I just wanted to be heard. And that was it. And then when I realized that, I went straight back to her, and it took me days to follow up with all the messages, 5 to 20 a day. Didn't respond back for a month to 2 months. And I responded back to every single one of those messages. And it's crazy. And this is where it positively took a turn, because there was one girl that I followed back up with, who she was living at home. She was being abused by her mum and by her stepdad, this girl. And her real dad wanted custody of her, right? But she wasn't able to go. But she was being sexually and physically abused by her mum and by her stepdad. And when I went back to her, I asked her what the update was. And she told me that she, from the back end of our conversation, she took her mum and her stepdad to court, and she won. Yeah. And she won, and her dad got custody of her.
Oh
And
my
that
God.
literally, just, I can't put it into words, that feeling that I had. But that was when I realized this is what I need to do for the rest of my life, is help these people with this message through which now is going to be my book, through the charity, through the movie that I'm going to create, and just make it a consistent thing to help as many people like that have outcomes that are similar to that.
Wow, I hope you feel really proud of yourself for that. Because, without you doing that first step that you did, which was very brave in itself,
Yeah.
um, that's incredible. And I really want to commend that. Just remarkable.
Yeah.
I think we all feel at some point we want to help someone with their lives, but to help someone so significantly is remarkable.
Yeah.
It
I
really is. Yeah, so
try
well
not to
done.
cry. Every time I say that story, I cry.
That's a struggling myself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And obviously that is someone you know about. The people you don't know about, the
Exactly.
people you will never hear about, there could be already by now thousands. Good
Well,
goodness, who knows, within 6 months, a year.
yeah. And I've had uh so far from this morning, I last checked, 506 copies of my book sold, right? And it's been, I don't know how long it's been. I think it's been like between 2 and 3 weeks. I think it was 2 Fridays ago I dropped the book. 506 copies. I'm just, what? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what? Like, and that's not off the back of publicists or anything. That's literally just my network. Then obviously my network then sharing it on because of the message.
Hmm.
But in relation to what you said there, I've had plenty of feedback, but I haven't had 506 copies worth of feedback. Do you know what I mean? I haven't had 506 people message me to say how the book is. So I know it's whatever you're getting feedback wise, it's in abundance in people not giving you that feedback. You know, it's just
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you won't, and they could be anywhere, Japan, who knows? They could be people reading your book, hearing your message, that are being impacted. That is the beauty of our life and our world now, is that we can create a message that can reach many. And I personally think it's one of the biggest gifts of this time, this weird year, that we've actually realized how connected we are, that we are all actually just one, and we can really support each other even though we don't really know each other. So just amazing. Let's come back to the book, because you have done what so many people consider and don't do, but you literally have published from start to end your own book, which is incredible. You have done it in such a short time as well. I know how hard it is. I'm on my third co-author book, is what I call the multi-author books. What has that been like for you? So on the back, we'll come back to your story in a minute, obviously, because that's the big reason why you're here. But what has that been like for you to experience that? Because it's quite a responsibility in itself, don't you find? I certainly do.
Yeah, it is a big response. What I remember, it's like everything that we look at, everything we touch comes from an idea, right? This laptop was once an idea. This mic was once an idea, and this is the first time and this isn't as well. I don't know if you'd class it as the same thing or not, but have always, and would like to at some stage in my life to have a physical business, just have a business that's physical, because I want a product in my hand that I've created. I want a physical thing. I want a tangible. And to go from idea of this book to be writing it on my laptop, so it's still not a physical thing, right? To then to upload it to Amazon, still not a physical thing. It's just there on a laptop. And then to get a video through from somebody dropping the book out of the Amazon parcel. And I'm thinking, I get those Amazon parcels, but it's never my book. It's another book that I brought. And that's my face falling out of the envelope. And I'm like, Jesus. And then they all start coming through. And now in my hand is, my friend said to me, he's like, are you not sick of seeing your face so much? Right? Because my face is everywhere. And I'm like, you obviously don't know me if you're asking that question. But
you're an actor, you're used to it.
Yeah, but it's just, in answer to that, it's a great responsibility. And it's also something I don't know, it's very hard to get used to look. I've been reading books for years. I try to stick to one book a week. It doesn't always pan out that way, but so I'm an avid reader. But now for my book to be part of that group of books is weird. It's weird, but I know that the impact that it's creating is just absolutely is insane. I can never have guessed the impact that it would have had. Just blown out the water.
It really has, and you've already been on Fox News. New York Times are knocking at your door. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. So the New York Post. And that's huge. And I got introduced, and I'm crossing my fingers. Because they said that people who are in the New York Post are mainly from New York. They can do it from other states in the US if it's a great story, but somebody who's in a different country, they said it probably won't pass. He goes, however, before I say no, let me pass it to a colleague of mine who is British, but she lives in the States, and she covers everything to do with sexual abuse. And apparently she saw it. She goes, I want him. So I'm crossing my fingers that happens. And you're British, so you know what I'm going to say now, but my goal is to get on Sunday Brunch This Morning and Good Morning Britain. And I'm very fortunate. I think I'm very fortunate just these relationships I built. So like last year, from the TikTok videos, I had a journalist reach out to me who works for an agency, and the agency that he works for are the ones responsible for putting people onto those TV shows I just mentioned. But then he couldn't do anything with my story because I didn't have a charity, I didn't have a book, and my granddad wasn't prosecuted because he died 2 years after. So the whole story could be fake, and could be somebody just trying to get attention. Which here's the thing, take the emotions out of it. I see where they're coming from, because there are people out there who may do that and who probably have done that. So I get it. But then a year later, I have a charity, I have a book, and I just thought, you know what, let me just reach back out to him because I saw he's been seeing all of my stories, he's been following me, and I reached back out to him and goes, it's time now. Now he works for the Sun. So so my article is going out in the Sun this week, and he said, once the article is out in the Sun, I'll put you in contact with the woman who runs the TV organization for Good Morning Britain and those ones. And now you have leverage. You know, you're not some guy who's lying, because you wouldn't have any of this. So I'm just hoping, because here's the thing: if I get on these platforms, the bigger the platform, the more people is gonna respond to the message in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, I said when's Oprah, because that's next. You know, that's on. I've seen that. I've seen it in my vision, Harry. It's a done deal, I tell you.
I appreciate it, Joe. I appreciate it.
No, honestly, it's just incredible. And you know what you just said then is like it's part of your journey. You've done the most remarkable thing, created charity. Before we come on to that, which is obviously the very positive outcome and the silver lining, if you like, another silver lining of you being incredibly brave. So just to recap, your dad sadly passed, and then that enabled you, as far as I understand from your reading your book, to then open up. Tell us what happened, Barry.
Yeah, so when I was 10 years old, I was sexually abused by my granddad. That lasted for over a year and a half. And the reason why it stopped was because we were sitting in the living room. Now, sometimes I would sit on my granddad's lap. And now, bearing in mind all these things that happen in regards to sexual abuse with my granddad, when I was at that age, I didn't know what he was doing. One was sexual abuse, because 16 years ago, I'm 26 now, 16 years ago, sexual abuse wasn't a thing that was on the news, that was in the papers. It just wasn't a thing that was loud enough for me to even have heard of the words. And so I didn't know it was wrong. And plus, he was my granddad. So if he's doing something to me, it didn't fathom my mind that there could have been a possibility that what he's doing was wrong, because my granddad, you respect your elders. So I was sitting on his lap. We was watching Eggheads, this old British TV show. And we was on a single like armchair couch, like a recliner couch, but it was positioned in a certain way that's facing the TV. Whoever was sitting in the room, because of where those sofas were positioned, you couldn't see us front on, right? So I was on his lap, he was watching TV. My stepmom was on one of the couches, and my granddad was smoking a roll-up cigarette. He had his hand over the arm of the couch, and she was just watching TV, and then his cigarette drops out of his fingers, lands on the floor. She doesn't take no notice. She's just assuming she's going to lean over and he's going to pick up the cigarette. But he doesn't. And it stays there and it's burning a hole in the carpet. My stepmom's looking at us and her spidey senses just ping off. And then she stands up and she calls me while she's walking out the room. So then I get off his lap. Now, bearing in mind, I don't remember any of this. This whole thing, this whole situation is not a single memory in my brain. But apparently she called me in. She questioned me. And then she called my dad and we drove home. And apparently I said in the car about what he had just done in the living room there. And then my dad said to me, right, goes, at some point in that conversation, he was like, right, don't talk about it, right? Just don't speak about this, because I don't want a black cloud over the family. I don't want you going to school, start telling all your mates, you know? So at the time, I was like, okay, didn't think anything. I was like, okay, I'm not thinking, oh, this is going to mess me up growing up, you know? It's just like, okay, sure. And plus, I don't want to go to school and start talking about, you know, about what was going on. It's the last thing I want to do. So I didn't do it. I never went around and saw my nan again for about 2 years. That's because 2 years after that event, my granddad died from a heart attack at work. So then I started to go back around to my nan's house and started to see her again. And for many years, I was growing up through school, and it didn't really impact me until I was in my late teenager years, 16, 17. So when I was 16, 17, my nan had already passed. We sold our house. We used that money to move out of London and move to Berkshire. So we moved to Berkshire, to this place called Bracknell. And when I was moving into Bracknell, I was thinking, right, nobody knows me here, right? Because the guy who was living in London was a virgin. He wasn't good with the girls. He wasn't an alpha male, right? He was introverted. When I go to this place, I don't want to be that guy anymore. Because the reason why I was like that is because I'm the guy who got molested by his granddad, right? There's a lot of insecurities, and I can't be a confident guy if I've got lots of insecurity. Well, you can. Sometimes it's a front, which I want to get onto now. When I moved to Bracknell, I was like, right, I'm an actor. I want to create a character. and I'm going to method act, and I'm going to become that character. And I became this character when I went to this college. I was a guy who'd already slept with loads of girls. I was super confident. I was alpha male, and it worked. I faked it till I made it. Right, like that character actually became me, and at the time it was great because people loved me. Right, the girls loved me, the guys loved me. It was fantastic. It was great. And then and then um and then I left college. I did a bit of traveling. Then I came back, became a personal trainer, and then in about 2014, my dad started to drink, right? But he's always drunk, but he started to drink a bit more than usual. And then as it went into like 2015 and 16, the drinking turned from weekend drinking to weekday drinking, then from at home drinking to in the car drinking. And then he just became an invisible, I call it invisible, an invisible alcoholic, because there's no way you could tell. He was the most functioning alcoholic you would ever meet in your entire life. You would not know he was drunk, except for me. I knew every time he was drunk because I knew bloody how many hairs he had on his body, right? Because my mum left when I was 4. We got a great relationship now, but my mum left when I was 4. So it was just me and my dad for a while, just me and him, right? So we had that like unique bond. I was the best man at his wedding when I was 9 years old, right? So like we were best friends. And so I knew when he'd had a drink. And when it came to January 2017, he became a diabetic. And here's the thing, right? He never just became a diabetic out the blue. It was that first domino that he flicked. He became an alcoholic, which leads on to the next thing, which leads on to the next thing. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And it just started to stack up. Became diabetic in January. Then in 2017, he died. June the 1st, he had a heart attack, very randomly, out of the blue. He's 48 years old. And that was a wake-up call for me. That was a wake-up call. I went through my grieving process. I went through the hate. I went through the blame. And then I became obsessed with trying to connect the dots. Why was he an alcoholic? You don't just become an alcoholic out the blue. There's a reason. It's a coping mechanism for something. But what is that something? And then Lewis Howes came out of a book called Mask and Masculinity. And I watched his interview on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And he was talking about 2 masks in particular, about the alpha mask and about the, I can't remember the other one, but how you were in front of girls. And it slapped me in the face because, like, that's what I've been doing. When I moved to Bracknell, I put it on those masks that he's talking about. And then I realized, and then I became obsessed with just trying to, like, increase this awareness about myself because I don't know myself. I'm not having that. I'm not moving forward without knowing who I am. And then I went to a business mastermind event. I broke my silence in front of 4 people. And then driving home, I did a video. I put it onto Facebook, breaking my silence to everybody. And then that is when that's when the snowball started to roll and started to grow and started to increase. But what's crazy, right, is that when I first shared my story and went onto Facebook, my family then knew everything. Everybody knew, right? Who's connected to me about the sexual abuse. But that time when my stepmom pulled me out of the living room, it was evident that in the car on the way home, I only told him about that one time. So on the video, when I said it was happening for a year and a half, I obviously kept that quiet as a kid, even to my parents. So they didn't know about that. And then when I went to my auntie's house, I then find out that it was me, it was my cousin, it was my auntie, and it was my dad, who were all abused by him. So then it made sense why my dad became an alcoholic, because he was sexually abused growing up and he lived in silence and he inflicted that pain onto himself, became an alcoholic, and he died in silence. And what I also found out was that my granddad grew up in a Catholic church in Ireland in a boarding school, and he was abused by the priests in that boarding school. Because if you've ever seen the film Spotlight, in Spotlight, at the end of the Spotlight film, before the credits, they come up with a list of institutions, boarding schools all around the world that have documented cases of the priests molesting kids. And where he grew up, the school he went to, is listed in that film. And then it's about that generational cycle of abuse. And when I realized that, I was like, 1, I'm breaking this abuse. I'm not going down a path of drinking. I'm not saying my dad chose it. It's not like he's like, in the future, I'm going to become an alcoholic. I know there's an element of not really having a choice. There's an element of you do have a choice. It depends on what way you look at it. But I was like, 1, that's not happening to me. I'm not passing this trauma on to my kids because I haven't solved it myself. If you read Body Keeps a Score, he talks about that a lot in his book. And not only that, but I'm going to help as many people as I can, especially grown-ass men, to not go down the same path as my dad and break that silence. And for people like me, young adults, to also break the silence and live with that message.
Well, you haven't just broken the silence, you've broken the cycle,
Yeah.
and that is the key. That is, and it's so sad to hear your story. I've read it, but just obviously hearing it from you is more profound and more heart-wrenching. But it feels like when I read your story and I saw your title, I thought, gosh, you haven't just broken the silence, you've broken the cycle. And that's the most beautiful thing for me to see. I have personally had abuse myself, and it's one of the things I promised, again, like you. I promised my kids I would never ever do anything to keep that cycle. I would break it and do something different. So I think it's remarkable what you've done, and it's remarkable how you're able just to be able to share it. So I know you're an actor, but still,
This is all an act, Joe.
You're not playing a part now, are you?
Yeah.
Oh God, would you play your own part in a movie? Could you do that?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a great question, because there are some people who don't want to play themselves in their own movie because they rather would observe it as a director and have the actor fill in their shoes. And I completely get that side. I really do. But this is a story where I need to fill those shoes.
Oh my God, that's just really hit me. That.
Yeah,
Wow.
I need to, and this is no discredit to other actors and their craft and how they can't portray it. I'm not coming at it from that angle. I'm coming at it from the angle that I'm two reasons. I'm very much the guy. I'm very much the actor who believes that my stories will be able to change the world through the art that I'm creating, not through my agent putting me forward for a role and I audition and I get the job. I don't see me getting to the level that I want to get to through that means. I see it through creating my own platform. So that was the first thing. But really, ultimately, with this movie, like, I know every bit of detail, and I know how I felt in every single moment, and it's just more true to me if I'm the guy who's portraying the character that I'm writing, which is basically just me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, but I guess you may, I suppose, change your mind, because it must be quite nice to be able to create the movie from the director's side, I suppose, with seeing it so crystal clear from the outside in, I suppose. But I think that's again an incredibly brave thing to do. And again, I know obviously people like companies like Netflix are crying out for material. They're crying out for original material. That so much more now is based on true stories. I was speaking to some authors last night, actually, that are going to have their story. I'm going to publish their book, and then that's going into a film. And we're just saying, who needs to create fiction? You just don't, because sadly, tragically, there's so much reality that we don't really need fiction. We can create stories and movies on the reality of life, unfortunately. But the sad, the continuous horrible. I've had so many friends, and I've got some very famous friends who've gone through boarding schools that have been abused to a sickening level. I mean, it really is hideous. Thankfully, they have also broken the cycle, which is wonderful, but they've suffered for a long, long time. What I think is incredible with you, Perry, is that you've managed to find the courage and strength to do it so early on. So many people, and obviously some in the being fine, but and thankfully not talking about abuse, but haven't been able to break the silence till later on, much later on, when they've got divorces under their belt and and broken families. So again, it's so admirable. You are an old soul in a young body, Perry. I don't know if anyone said that before, but that's how I see you. I really see your soul. It's beautiful.
That's how I want it, Joe. I appreciate it.
Oh no, it's amazing. And obviously, you have come on to do one of those amazing things that I feel that you can do once you've suffered, and that is to help others. Tell us about your amazing charity.
Yes. So on the back end of all those messages on Instagram that came through TikTok, I wanted to find a way to kind of like help them further at a larger scale. And a friend of mine, Juliet, she was raised in a foster home. She was put on a doorstep of a foster home in America. And this foster home, when she got to a certain age, she became part of like the she joined the other kids in that foster home. And these kids, basically the foster parents almost had like a list of clientele. Clientele would come around, the kids would line up, each one would get raped, each one would get tortured, and the kids would have to hold down the other kid whilst it was happening. And Juliet was raised in an environment that you only really see in films. I had somebody message me, like, her story's in the book. Had somebody message me like, I love the book, but Juliet's story, there's no way it's real. I'm like, I know you don't mean harm by saying that, right? Because I know you're not discrediting Juliet's story, because I understand trying to accept that is actually a reality that happens out there. And unfortunately, it is a reality in a lot of foster care homes, especially because it's as bad as it is. There's a lot of kids that get lost in the system. There's a lot of kids that go to foster homes and then get forgotten about by the system. And these foster homes can get away with it because they're not checked, right? And that was the case with Juliet's, and she luckily got rescued by like a foster mum, a brand new mum, and she lived a great life of love after that. And she was already building like a charity in the early stages. And I know that she wanted to bring on somebody ideally who shares the same vision. And we were already friends. We were already connected. She was already knowing what I was doing, was on a friendship level. And then we just like, should we just like come together? Like, our stories are so powerful. Let's come together. So there's me, there's Julia, and there's Sam. Sam's an awesome guy. He's like a tech wizard. So he helps us with the charity, Beautiful Soul. And it's three of us just trying to make it happen. And I won't lie, the pandemic slowed it right down. Was hoping to have our first safe home in America the end of last year, but we can't do that before we get non-profit status, and that hasn't come through just yet. But what's really awesome is that we're getting donations through, which is amazing. And this week we went live on our biggest campaign, which we've been working towards for so long, and it's where you can sponsor a child. Right, so you can sponsor a child for a monthly sponsorship fee, and for that sponsorship, you're paying for this child, right, this specific child, to get therapy from a child therapist, and they are a victim of sexual abuse, and like you know that your money that you're literally donating every month is going towards Sarah, right, who is 12, whose parents put her forward to get picked from us as a charity, to have therapy sessions for 12 months with a child therapist that is assigned with us. So it's just doing work like that is just, it's not even work. It's an honor,
Wow, it's amazing. And is that a global charity, or is that set up in the US?
It's set up in the US. It's a hell of a lot of work to go out. Like I didn't even think it was going to be. It's like, why is it that hard? Like, it's so hard, right? It's stupid hard. But because I'm so the two co-founders, they're American. I'm British. I'm like, I want We Rescue Kids. I want it over here. I want to create safe homes over here. That's going to happen, but it's going to take probably about a year before that can happen. Before it can come, because we need a lot more foundations set up in the States. So when we contact a British lawyer, like, here's what we got in the States, and then it's much easier to bring it over. So it is in the plans. Once it's in the UK, I'm sure it will snowball, and then it can kind of go everywhere. That's the plan.
Yeah. Good to have a plan. Always good to have a plan.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, that's amazing. I really think, and I wanted to come on to that actually, because I'm assuming it sounds like you've had some kind of help yourself. You've had some therapy. You've had support through your journey, because it's hard to cope with all this, isn't it? Cope with what you've done. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've had therapy. I never went down the path of getting therapy to help with the abuse. And I wouldn't, somebody who's been abused or if they live in silence, I would never say to them, you don't need therapy, because I never got therapy. I'm not saying that. I believe, and I truly do. I've just moved to Guildford. I've only been here 4 weeks, and I've been looking around. Picking the right therapist is no easy task, because it's not somebody you just want to be with for a month, right? So when I found the right therapist, I'll be buddying up with them here in Guildford, because I truly, and I just want to say this, it deserves the time to say this, is that I believe every single person on this planet should have a therapist, right? Because going to therapy, and because there's stigma around going to therapy. I was on a radio show last week. She's a therapist and she runs this radio show. She was like, there's such a stigma around therapy. You know, if you're like, oh, I go to therapy, people assume something's wrong with you. There doesn't need to be anything wrong with you to have therapy. It's just to go and to confide in somebody and just speak. Speaking is the biggest therapy, and I believe everyone on the planet should have a therapist for sure. So I just wanna get that out there. And yeah, it's been tough. It has, and that's where having loving people around you. I know some people aren't fortunate enough to have that, because I've seen it firsthand. And when that is the case, it's like the only person you can, like Juliet, for example, when she was growing up, she doesn't have family, you know? She didn't have family. The only people she had was the people that were selling her to clients. And so then it comes to a stage where the only person you can really rely on is a person in the mirror, until you get to a stage, because the universe will bring that, where it will then allow you to cross paths with somebody who you can bloody trust with everything, you know, and then you start building on it from there. But I don't know. It's just, it has been tough. It has been tough, but having help from friends, having help from family, from therapy, from coaching, that's what allows you self-care. You know, self-care is the biggest thing, and that's what allows you to carry on moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. And just to come on to the family, because obviously when we sort of talk and share stories, families can go one of two ways, really, can't they? And you know, how have your family been around supporting you? How has that been for you?
Interesting question. So they've been great. My family have been great. They've been great with everything. They've been super proud that I've been getting out there with the story. There are members, I won't say what rank in the family they are, but there are members of the family who have their concerns, and I understand the concerns. The concerns being, they don't want people to find out this about the family. They don't want people to find out that about the family. Don't say my name. But then if I'm not saying the name, well, obviously you're talking about me. If you're saying it in this way, people are going to think it's me. And I actually was speaking to somebody yesterday who said, dude, I want to share my story, but I'm afraid it's going to upset some people in the family. And I get what the response I'm going to say now. Some people will not agree with it. Some people will agree with it, but it's a path that I took. And the path that I take is, listen, it's your story. It's not your family's story. It's not your mum's story. It's not your dad's story. It's no one else's story. It's your story. And if you're not sharing your story because of the potential reaction from people in your family, then that will not serve you well in the slightest. So you share your story. What you can do is not say names. What you can do is maybe leave out a couple of details that doesn't indicate who you're specifically talking about, right? That's what you can do. And I recommend you do that if you're worried about your family's response. But at the end of the day, they just got a bloody respect that you're sharing your story. And if they don't respect it, that's not your problem. And that's literally the path that I took. I've had conversations with members of my family, and my response was, listen, I will stop doing X, and but you need to understand that I'm not stopping my story. And my family know me. And like, growing up, they've been trying to teach me X, Y, and Z, and I won't listen to them, because I'm the type of person who will, listen, I understand you're saying X, Y, and Z. Let me go out and experience X, Y, and Z and learn from my own mistakes. I'm very much like going through and through. So they know that. So they can't really say much. But here's what I say. I was on a podcast this morning, and I said the consequences of you living in silence far outweigh the consequences of you breaking that silence. And if you just understand that to its core, then that should answer your question on how to break it, and when to break it, and how, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and obviously that could be just with one person. You know, not everyone has to do what you've done, obviously, which is obviously create a path and a purpose to support as many people as you can. But just by sharing your story with one person or 5 or whatever is so important, isn't it? And when it's a physical, you know, everything that happens to our bodies stays in our bodies. And sadly, all of this can manifest in ways that many of us would never even understand or equate. But you have to
Yeah. The last chapter of my book is called Ways to Break the Silence. And I say to people, just because I spoke to somebody, right? And that was how I shared my story, doesn't mean that needs to be the way for you. Because me sitting here with you, Joe, and telling you my story is a form of expression, right? And there's many different ways or forms of expression. You can choreograph a dance piece, you can write a poem, you can journal, you can tell yourself in the mirror. Nobody else needs to hear, right? You can. Another one I love to say is, you'll see those paintings and it just looks like paint has just been splattered on it. Some people are like, they're looking and like, what on earth is this? And that might be a reaction, but I'll tell you what, right now, the person who did that is not it. That is a form of expression. That is them breaking their silence after 10 years. And that is them turning a blank canvas into a form of expression. So it's about, literally, when it comes to breaking silence, it's just about flicking that first piece. What is that first domino that you can flick over, write the sentence out? Okay, done. Okay, I've done it. I've done it. What's the next step? Put it into a journal. What's the next step? Tell yourself in the mirror. What's the next step? Telling my auntie, right? But if you go straight to telling your auntie from the first domino, that's a huge mountain to climb. But just go step by step and you'll get there.
Yeah, and for me, and obviously, look, my authors in Being Fine, just the fact that they wrote that their first version was such a release for them. And writing is such a powerful. You don't need to worry about your writing, and I personally recommend, having done it myself a number of times now, just by writing your story, write it for yourself, write it to you, write it to a younger you or an older you, or you in your next life. Write your own story, write it down, forget about the style and the grammar and all that, just ignore all that. It's in itself, I think, a very powerful thing to acknowledge what you've been through. Do you remember when you first wrote it down? How was that for you?
Yeah. What, my story in general or the book?
No, your story in general. When you that first time when you just kind of allowed the words to flow. Yeah.
Yeah. It it was the first time I'd done it. So the first time I shared it was through video, but then I started to write it like copy, on posts. And I'm a big writer because I write scripts, I write, the book, and it's a very therapeutic process. It allows me to get the 1,000 thoughts in my head out onto paper, which I know all writers can relate to. And it's very therapeutic. It allowed me to understand what I went through a lot better. It allows me to understand the feelings that I was going through, the feelings I wasn't aware of. And it was just so many doors were unlocking the more buttons I was typing on the keyboard.
Yeah, amazing. And not only have you, the extra amazing of all the amazing stuff you've done, Perry, is to not just publish your story. You've invited all these other authors. You've got 14 other authors into your book, sharing their story and breaking their silence, which is just amazing. So that's a whole load of other people and their friends, family, audiences that you kind of you've created those ripples of
Yeah.
change, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Oh, Perry, honestly, I've so enjoyed talking to you tonight. I feel very blessed to get in there now before, the list is long and you've got an agent and you're busy and you're
Stop
kind
it,
of
Joe.
out in Hollywood with Tom Cruise or whatever.
I appreciate keep on talking. Yeah, I'm loving this
I, I
video.
I can see it. I can see it. I can see you getting at the limit. It'll be the BAFTAs and the Emmys and the whatever. But yeah, like yeah, okay. Well, I interviewed him. Yeah, in March 21. Remember me. So listen. So I have asked you to join the Being Fine second edition message. We would love to have you. In part because Being Fine was always intended to be a whole range of male voices. I'm very grateful and blessed to say that one of our new authors is going to be 79 years of age. It took him till the age of around 60 to break his silence, just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, wow.
And he is now ready to write. So after 79 years, he's now ready to start writing, and he's going to write a chapter in our second edition of Being Fine.
Love it.
So we would be thrilled to have you as part of our message, obviously, of helping yourself and supporting others, which is very much the ethos of the book.
Amazing.
Okay, well, so just to finish off, in case anyone is watching, Perry, that is suffering and is struggling, because you never know who watches this now or tomorrow or a week or a year's time. What could you advise them for someone who is suffering right now?
is that it's easy for me to say to you that you're not alone going through that, because I'm sure you're aware of that. I know I'm sure that you're aware that you're not the only one who's gone through what you went through. But what I will say is that whatever this external world you're viewing, so whether you think people are going to laugh at you, people are going to point fingers, people aren't going to believe you, whatever it is this external world you're viewing. You need to understand that it's just merely a reflection of your internal world, right? It's what you're internally seeing, and whatever you're internally seeing can be changed. So, and you have the power to change that. And I know that because I was sitting in my car, right? 7 takes it took me on video, and I was crying, and I stopped it because I didn't want people to see me cry because it made me less of a man. I put me back on and I wiped the tears. I didn't want to cry on it. And when I uploaded the video, I saw like 60 people had viewed the video, 2 people had left a comment. And in my mind, that the demon in my mind was saying, dude, so that's 2 comments, 60 people have watched it, take away 2, that's 58. So 58 people have watched it and haven't left a comment. That's because they're all laughing at you, they're all pointing fingers, right? And I was going to delete the video, but I knew that was just a thought in my head that could be changed. So what I'd done, and it's just in a dialogue, right? And then you're in a dialogue, if you're not careful, hold you prisoner. So I took the phone and I threw it to the back of my car, and I just started driving. But I threw it to the back of my car and started driving, so I couldn't reach back and grab the phone. I couldn't reach it. By the time I got home, 30 minutes later, I checked my phone, and there was not one. There was hundreds of like, it's on Facebook now. You can go and check it out. There was not hundreds of comments, hundreds of likes, messages, and there was not one negative comment. Not one. Not
Wow.
one. And that right there is proof that for years, I thought all of those comments would have been negative, and there wasn't one single one. So if you're living in silence, I just want you to know that you got brothers and sisters all around you, all over the world, who have suffered in silence. They've broken it, and they want you to do the same thing, because life, it gets a much lighter, right? You're carrying a lot of weight on you because you live in silence, and you can drop that weight as soon as you break that silence.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And by the way, I just want to let everybody know that my DMs are open. I don't care what I've got going on in my day. If you message me and you're coming to me, you're confiding in me with your story, you best believe that I'm messaging you back, and I'll stay with you whilst you're breaking your silence. So I'm always open for that. My DMs are always open.
That's amazing. And that's really kind. And I hope you manage to keep that as you get busier and busier, which I'm sure you will. But that's an incredible kindness and generosity of your time. So
Can I just say something on that, Joe, quickly?
okay.
That's a very interesting point you just said there, because I've had a couple people say to me, they're like, let's just fast forward 2 years, and let's just say you're at like Lewis Howes's level, for example, right? And because and I see that because Lewis Howes, I'm following a very, very similar path to Lewis Howes. He was abused when he was younger. He created a mask of masculinity. It's very, very similar, and I didn't plan it out to be that way. And he has numerous people messaging him, and I know, and I'm not going to follow his path. Like if you message him, I personally don't believe it's him that's messaging back. I believe that he has somebody that does that. But to me, that goes against my values. I don't care how big I am. I don't care. I would rather, if it was one or the other, not message somebody back than have an assistant message them, pretending that they're me. Never going to happen. And I don't care. I know me. I know my values, like all the profits from this book, right? So I left my business behind last year. In February. So I lost my main income, right? Right now I'm putting all my trust in the universe, right? That thing is just going to pan out. And I'm talking about income wise as well. I'm writing this. I wrote this book. I could have easily done a 50-50 split on the money. Every single penny goes to profit. And that's because it's in line with my values, because I'm not in any of this to make money. I'm in this to create an impact. And I know when I'm there, it's going to be the same thing, because I wouldn't be there without this way of thinking. I just wanted to say that, because that's a lot of people have asked that question recently, and it's just been getting me thinking. I'm like, no, my values are very much in line.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And God, who was the actress on stage once? Oh my gosh, I've forgotten her name now. Dakota Johnson. She was on stage receiving an award once, and she was talking about abuse in the movie industry. And she said, "I promise you that when my phone," so she did it this way, and here you go. This is when you're in the realms with Dakota Johnson. She said, "I promise, if you ring my phone and it answers, it's this is my special phone number to be there for you, and you can ring this anytime. If it doesn't ring at all, then I'm not there. But if it rings, I will pick it up. It will only ever be me." And what a beautiful thing! And she had a whole night of phone calls then from women that had suffered abuse in the movie industry, and it was
I
one
didn't
of
even
the
know that.
powerful things I've ever seen an award ceremony. And then she got her her Hollywood A-star friends to do the same.
Yeah.
Just for a section of time, a certain number, you pick it up, you ring, and you can speak to me.
Yeah.
And it was just what a great offering. Goodness me, honestly, I'm just blown away by our conversation tonight. And thank you for watching and listening. I hope you've been as blown away as I have by this incredible man. You are just remarkable, and what you've done already is remarkable. And watch this space, because will continue to inspire, I'm sure, and give so many people hope, and so many young people hope that life can get better.
Thank you, Joe.
Break the silence like you've done. Perry Power's book is available on Amazon. It's amazing, and I'd like a signed copy. Can I have a signed copy? We've still got time to sign it.
We can do that, Joe.
Awesome. And yeah, you can reach out to Perry Power. Very easy to find. And find out more about him on all social media, obviously, especially TikTok. And when are you in the Sun? Is it tomorrow? Day after?
So no, they still got the article. It'll be coming out the end of this week, beginning of next week.
Brilliant.
It'll be on my. I don't have a date yet, but it'll be on my. It would be very much the case of they'll email me now and say it's out tomorrow. It'd be like that type of thing. You know, it'd be very last minute.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to badge you about being being fine, obviously. But no, it'll be a joy to have you in there too. But thank you for all that you do. It's amazing, and thank you for being on tonight.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you very much. Thanks
Bye.
for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next week at the same time. Bye bye.